Welcome back. It's episode 3 of Terror of the Autons. So I would like you, if you would, to press play in 3, 2, 1, now. I'm watching the BBC DVD, so I'm quite enjoying watching this in colour. As I said, I have seen it before in colour, but I think, as I say, I was used to it in black and white. I then had a very ropey video quite late on, I think, of it in colour that I'm not sure I really watched that much. And then obviously got the DVD. And that was the beautiful thing about the DVDs, is that they actually opened up a lot of stories that you would have previously seen, and then just that little sort of nudge up in quality suddenly of picture suddenly can make things seems more enjoyable. Certainly a few of the Hartnells I know I got a greater appreciation of because I could sort of see them, which helps. It's amazing considering that no actual proper colour print of this exists. How they've managed to get the off-air colour and meld it with the film print. I think it looks very, very good. And this, I remember this being the sort of thing I wanted more of, because this is quite a mythical aspect of this story as well. Was that there was the famous story of Terry Walsh falling down the hill, which we will see, and you get the handguns, which I love. The idea that the Autons, I remember I wrote some sort of fan fiction where an Auton would reveal itself not by having its hand drop like that, but by actually blowing its own sort of hand off. The first time it revealed itself to be a bad guy. Actually, the idea of it shooting its own fingers to bits to kill you the first time. But again, anything that takes something ordinary like a hand and turns it into, oh my god, a lethal weapon, a hidden death, is a fantastic idea. And yeah, we're in a quarry. But quarries look great. They're great for action sequences. They look good. You can control what you're up to. Oh, and there's a unit soldier there. Yes, I think he's not long for this world. He's like the equivalent of a red shirt in Star Trek. We never see the Brigadier having to write those letters, do we? To go, it was always good in Spooks, wasn't it, when somebody died and they had to have a sort of, oh, there we go. Oh, look at that. That's great. Boom. Look at that. That's great. That's what unit stories are all about. It's terribly bloodthirsty, isn't it? But yeah, in Spooks, they'd always have this sort of the funerals or whatever, saying, Martin worked in the civil service, and their parents would never know that actually they'd been real heroes. I'm sure with unit soldiers it was the same. Like, I'm afraid he died in a training exercise. But there isn't anything of him because he's been disintegrated. I'm sure the Autons disintegrated people in Spearhead from Space, didn't they? But I like this sort of puzzle. That's a great stunt, which I know is not all of it's entirely deliberate. And the fact that he gets up again straight away and starts climbing back is terrific. I love that. I like this whole sequence. Because, a monster being indestructible is a great thing. A monster that is disguised as a policeman is a great thing. This is all very Doctor Who. And you can, so more of that. But I think I wanted more of that. So I'm very happy so far about that sequence and its execution, because Terry Walsh wasn't supposed to, I believe, fall that far, or I think he was hit by the car when he shouldn't have been, and was sort of sent flying over, but the cameras were still rolling. So that was the story that abounded at the time. It was one of the early Doctor Who anecdotes. There were a few like that where they're like part of the furniture, because those were the stories that were told about particular stories. And yeah, Terror of the Autons, questions in the House of Lords, and Terry Walsh getting accidentally knocked all the way down the hill. But it's the fact that he gets up, starts walking back. And I do like the Doctor is a bit of a hypocrite, but I do quite like the fact he hasn't got any. He's got absolutely no time for chatting about the plan. It's just like, yes, it's obvious. And I have to say, I have a lot of sympathy. The Doctor's the sort of guy that would get the flat pack from IKEA and go, I'm not looking at a bit of paper that says how to do it. I know how to do it. And then would be furious 3 hours later. And I like the dynamic between the Brigadier and the Doctor. I know in a grown-up programme there would be less of a twinkle, but it is a programme that we fall in love with as kids. A certain sort of coziness is nice, and I love the fact that we know and love the Brigadier and Nicholas Courtney. When I was younger, having a military figure like the Brigadier was so tough, and he seemed so right, and I think actually a lot of the sort of twinkly stuff didn't quite register as much because they were all grown-ups, and seemed so sort of grown up and official. So actually it didn't undermine it at all. And it's only as you get a bit older and you realise there's a sort of rapport there. and these two work together so brilliant. It is partially because Pertwee works quite well when he's being really patronising, but she takes it, and she's I don't think she's diminished by it, because because she is capable in her own way, and she sort of lets it sort of wash over her a little bit. He is a bit of a gitter at times and it is sometimes unpleasant, but I think as a general thing, their dynamic is rather delightful, and it suits both characters quite well. And this is a very, very John Pertwee is Doctor Who moment. Walking out, slightly furious. I love the fact that he just kicked the TARDIS door. And I like this. That is terrifying. I'm a kicker of inanimate objects, and it's the worst thing you can do, especially because I'm a treader on rakes. I've done it more often than I'd like to think. But then, of course, you've got this. Yeah. Oh, the Doctor's amused by the fact he's just stranded a merciless alien psychopath on the planet. Beautiful. Now, daffodils, I didn't realise this, were given away with plastic, with washing powder. So this was a thing. Plastic daffodils. And of course, when a thing is a new thing, you go, what more could you want? A daffodil that will never die. I've got 200 bulbs in the corridor that need to be planted, and they will die unless I plant them. So I should really be doing that instead of doing a Doctor Who podcast. These are great. I think again, I wasn't wild about them when I was younger, but now I really like them because I get the contrast between what they represent, the oversized, over smiley, gaudily coloured. They're sort of like malevolent yellowcoats, aren't they? It's sort of like Heidi with Botox, and what lies beneath, the blank-faced automatons, the blank-faced, lacking in individuality, lacking in features, cold, and I think that's another great understanding from Robert Holmes of what Doctor Who does well. Have these gaudy flower vendors, in sunshine yellow, that actually are the murderers. He's like the alien killers. He's for somebody that worried about his abilities as a dramatic actor. John Pertwee was very good at being testy and furious and no nonsense. He was known as a comic and a voice man, a comedy voice man, and you know, he's got a dramatic urgency about him that fits him like a glove. I hope he wasn't, and I know I believe he could be quite difficult, and that was probably bred from his insecurity, which is a shame. I don't like the idea that he's insecure, because he shouldn't be, because he's very good. But it's easy to underestimate sometimes how even the most confident, dashing, elegant-looking performer can be a bag of nerves. So remember that when you tweet somebody who you think's got it made, and say something mean to them. They might be dying inside. Brown Rose. Dermot Toohey. Brown Rose, of course, is a joke, because the name Brown Rose sounds a bit like brown nose, because he is a sort of civil servant-y type that this era has great disdain for, which I think is a great British tradition of being run by the civil service and not approving of them. And this is the Doctor, isn't it? Using that sort of unpleasant hierarchy to his advantage, and this can be seen as reflecting badly on the Third Doctor, and I think I have read it like that, of the Doctor being a sort of clubbable guy who uses his influence to push around a junior civil servant. But I think Brown Rose is supposed to be a bit of a Burke, and the Doctor's using, you know, the weapons of the establishment against the establishment itself, even if that weapon is a sort of bit of name dropping and pushing about a pen pusher. But yeah, Brown Nose is a good joke. He gets top billing this episode, knocks Michael Wisher down the credits. Poor old Mrs. Farrell. You're not going to be able to make yourself a cup of tea, love. Your kitchen's made of CSO. But this is an ordinary family setup. This is the sort of world that the Pertwee era looked to sort of ruffle the feathers of and upset. But yeah, is the Third Doctor an establishment figure? He sort of has his cake and eats it, really. He certainly looks fantastic, doesn't he, in his frilly shirt and his cape. If you can wear a frilly shirt and a cape and get away with it, I think Larry Turner does say that in that 30 Years in the TARDIS documentary, doesn't she? And it's actually quite right that not many people can get away with that sort of outfit. But Pertwee is so incredible looking. Now, Norman Stanley here, playing the telephone operator who's checked out by Mike Yates, was cast quite late, because this was going to be Hayden Jones, who is also the voice of the Autons, and who also the voice of Joe Grundy in The Archers for a bit, until he died and was taken over by Edward Kelsey, also a servant to Doctor Who. But Hayden Jones got cast in The Mind of Evil as Lenny Vosper, a better part than this, one of the inmates of the prison and thugs. And so, you know, even though Michael Wisher had been in it only a couple of stories ago, there was a season break. So instead, Norman Stanley is cast quite late as the telephone operator, and it's his last job. He was dead a couple of years later, died in 73, this is 71. So I don't know much about Norman Stanley at all, apart from that. Cast quite late in the day, and was dead before I was born, bless him. But is the second person to play the Master, because he is the telephone engineer, is the Master, showing that the Master's art of disguise is pretty phenomenal, and takes in the body shape as well as excellently fitting latex mask, until the moment it has to be taken off, then it comes off like a doddle. John away. I like the way she says taking John away. It just falters slightly. Oh, poor old Mrs. Farrell. Barbara Leake. It is pretty grotesque, isn't it? I like the fact that Doctors has a sort of lab in a castle. Unit HQ is never. Is it ever a castle again? I don't know. So yeah, the series of inventive deaths shows a gleefully sort of morbid imagination from Robert Holmes, who, lest we forget, is only 4 stories in. He's sort of found his feet with the Crotons and the Space Pirates, neither of which you would call typical Robert Holmes. Spearhead from Space is slightly different because it's all made on film, so it's difficult to account for. It's something of an anomaly. It's something of a one-off Spearhead, just because of the way that it looks and what it represents, and setting up a new Doctor. But this is I think the first, for which it must be celebrated, the first flourishing of the sort of Robert Holmes successfully marrying his sense of humour, I think, because the Space Pirates is funny-ish, and it certainly has funny intent in places with Milo Clancy, but where his sense of humour combines with his storytelling, and he goes, well, why don't I have fun with the way that I kill people? Why don't I create a character like McDermott just to kill him off? Okay, I've got a killer chair. No, that's not very efficient, so then we'll have a killer doll. Oh no, that's not efficient either. Then we'll have a killer telephone. And you can tell he's having a great time. So all of those ideas, I think, are pretty fantastic. No, they haven't got a sliding connection or whatever it is, molecular analyzer in stock. And the Brigadier very much takes it in his stride. That their relationship is already pretty well established, which is very nice. But he's been tetchy with both Yates and Benton in this story. Oh yes. Oh, so Yates and Joe are going to make cocoa in the Doctor's lab, which is yeah. No, actually, I like that Auton mask. It works slightly better from a distance. Actually, I'm the master. There we go. That works. That's fine. I always think that he goes the long way about making a cup of cocoa, because he uses a Bunsen burner and an uncovered beaker full of water. You want to cover that to make it boil, or just use a kettle. But I suppose I am in a house with all mod cons in 2020, and that perhaps it was perfectly normal to boil water on top of a Bunsen burner. They are in a lab. So here they are in the Doctor and the Breeder on location in the factory, which is this where Joe's on the phone to Mr. Campbell, the Dolly Scotsman, one of the great unseen characters in Doctor Who. You go, I'll sort that wee lassie out with whatever it is. You're a Dolly Scotsman, Mr. Campbell. And she is. You'd do anything for her. She is so charming. Joe is lovely, and she has all the qualities for a Doctor Who companion. Actually, she's capable, but she's also scatty and prone to get in trouble. That's a very Doctor Who image. A soldier with two mugs, thing of cocoa, a gun in his hand, shooting a doll to bits. Yeah, okay, I'll take that. I'll take that. That's Doctor Who. Is this going to be my favourite bit of the episode? I do like this bit coming up when I would like more Autons. I think I do like the Autons, and we still haven't seen an awful lot of them, have we? But I suppose there's not an awful lot they can do. I mean, at least they talk in it. They don't talk in Spearhead. Are they actually better when they don't talk? I don't know. They become perhaps a bit generic-y and monstery when they're chatting away, go, Farrell, we are going away. Whereas actually when they're sort of silent and deadly at hiding in a safe. You just, obviously it's not, you just wait in the safe. If anybody opens it, just shoot them. Especially if it's if it's a soldier in Wurzel Gummidge. I know he hasn't been Wurzel Gummidge yet. Oh, so yes, okay. That's a nice bit of detective work to get us to the next part of the story. Although you would want your villains to cover their tracks a bit, I think, at this day and age. But it does give us the opportunity for a bit of Holmes and Watsoning with the Doctor, and this rather glorious moment where the Doctor opens a safe and there's an Auton in it. Love that. That's just great. Yes, they are, Doctor. Remarkably persistent. And we're straight back to Unit HQ. That's very economic storytelling. Oh yeah, because there's cuts to this episode. Because Bill McGurk, I always thought Bill McGurk was the Auton policeman in the opening scenes on location, but he's not, because he's credited as fetch some cocoa, and he says fetch a tin of what? You were making cocoa in my lab. But Bill McGurk, who's in Enemy of the World, Barry Letts uses a lot of his actors a lot, which is very loyal. Unless you're not in one of his productions, then you go, it's an awful close shop that I can't get into. That is the truth of an actor's career. If you're in the shop, it's a lovely boutique that serves all the right people. If you're not in the shop, it's a bad shop that's locked and everyone in it's a git. But Bill McGurk, sadly, got into the shop, but then I can't. But everything he wanted to buy wasn't available. Bill McGurk filmed some scenes as a policeman who gets killed, who goes into the coach, has a bit of a chat with Farrell and the Autons, and gets killed. And all of his scenes end up on the cutting room floor, so he's still credited. Like Dave Carter in episode 1 of the Android Invasion. Dave Carter, we saw in episode 1 of this. He's in episode 1 of the Android Invasion and is cut, but still gets the credit. There are a few others like that. I think Dean Hollingsworth is the bus conductor in one of the episodes of Greatest Show in the Galaxy. Anyway, again, it's me getting bothered about credits again. Not bothered, it's just they're people who are credited in an episode they are not in, which is what happens with Bill McGurk on this episode. Why do I care? Because I'm sure you don't. I can only apologise. I should have been going, look at that brilliant bit with the murderous telephone cable of death. But instead I'm going, well, actually, these closing credits have this rather... So, Policeman, Bill McGurk. He was sometimes, I think on Enemy of the World, he's credited as William McGurk. He did some stuff at the RSC as well. Anyway... Listen, you want me to choose something that I have... Sorry, I'm eating a bar. I've got to keep my strength up. Otherwise, how will I remember facts that nobody wants to hear? So, I have to choose for Richard Marson. For those who've forgotten or haven't listened to episodes 1 and 2, in which case, what are you doing? Well, I wanted to tune in to see if you'd talk about why Bill McGurk is credited. I'm going to choose the scene in the quarry. Just because it was my standout moment of the whole story when I was younger. And it seemed to have everything. Action, gunfire, a stunt, good location. And as I say, for a story that disappointed me a bit when I was a kid, that was sort of everything that I wanted the story to be. So, the scene in the quarry with the Auton policeman, including that wonderful stunt, even though some of it was a mistake from the mighty Terry Walsh. So I'm going to pop to the future to see what Richard Marson has to say, and to be honest with him about what I've chosen and see if we have chosen the same thing. I'm going to make a prediction. I wonder if he's going to choose the thing I nearly chose, which is the the sort of garish daffodil men look of the Autons that hides such blank evil beneath. I might hold that in reserve for episode 4. Who knows? Because I've gone for the quarry scene, but I wonder if Richard will choose that. Anyway, let's go and see what he says. Into episode 3 now. Episode 3. Yes, I won't give you any clues. So, Richard, tell me what. Well, in fact, before we do that, let's do another question. You say you met all these amazing people when you were working for Doctor Who magazine. Who made the biggest impression on you as a young man interviewing your heroes and the people that made your show?
Well, I'll cheat by giving you a kind of double answer. So one would be Barry Letts, because I was really amazed at the care he took. So if you did an interview with him, I did a whole John Pertwee winter special. And he was almost like the unpaid, unsung advisor. He would phone me up. He would send me notes. He read all the text. I was 18 or something and very green in a lot of ways. And protected from that by not knowing how green I was. I just thought this is how things were, and that I could troll off to Television Centre or go to wherever and do these things and type it up and it would all be fine. But I think he very sensitively would say, well, how about this? Or that's not quite right. And do it in a way that really empowered you. So I look back and I think that's what made him a special person. And that's what I think when you hear actors who can sometimes get a bit too lyrical, perhaps, that's what they owe to him, because he was a very enabling person. And I think he did that with someone. I was just a peripheral a fan who he didn't need to take anything like that bother with, but he did. And that has actually a memory that's sort of grown as time has gone on. And I've become obviously an old, I nearly said an old pro, has a double meaning. And I sometimes think that it's made me think how important it is to treat everybody that you deal with in a way that is compassionate, empathetic, and all the rest of it, without losing sight of what they're there to do. So he, as I say, he wasn't just buttering me up or making me feel good. He was trying to get me to improve what I was doing, so that presumably the text reflected the Pertwee era more accurately, and I didn't make howlers that he would be unhappy with. So it was a kind of win-win. The other person was John Nathan Turner, because John, who was an extraordinary character in so many ways, and could be so entertaining. He could be so lovely and so funny and friendly, but he could also be terrifying, and you would never know which John you'd get. So he would phone me up, or rather his secretary would phone up the payphone in the college where I lived, because that's how sophisticated it was. And I was usually asleep because I was a student doing plays all the time. So I was usually in bed at kind of 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, and someone bang on my door and say, BBC's on the phone. And so I'd kind of drag myself round to where the payphone was, and it would be Sarah Lee, John's secretary, who'd be quite pissed off. And now, I used to think it was unreasonable, and now I think, of course she was pissed off, because I was, keeping her waiting. And she was probably thinking, this isn't high on my list of priorities, phoning through the news for Gallifrey Guardian. But she wouldn't do the actual content. She'd just be, he was very into the kind of image of being a producer. So it'd be like, oh, I've got John for you. So when I was there, she'd then put me through to John, and then there'd be a pause, and there'd be, hi, how are you? And he'd always draw out the hi, how are you? Like kind of going off the end of a ski slope. And, and then you'd work out whether you got good John or bad John. And if you got good John, it would be lovely conversation. He'd be really helpful. And he'd say, how about this? Or how about, but if you pissed him off or he was in a bad mood, well, he wouldn't mince his words. And I remember he knew that he would get the paginations, like the plans for what we were working on, for 3 months ahead. And he saw this article that we were going to do about fantasy males and fantasy females. And he said to me, he said, I'm not sure about this. He said, what exactly does it involve? And so I chatted through what it was, waffling away, because I hadn't started thinking about it yet. It was a waffle article. And then he said, well, just keep it clean, okay? And I just thought it was so funny, the idea that somehow I was going to write, kind of Jackie Collins meets Doctor Who for for the magazine. But he was a really vivid person, and I part of the reason I was drawn to his story years later was what happened to him became almost like a metaphor for how the BBC and the industry changed. And we had certain similarities because I obviously hit a cropper with Blue Peter towards the end of that time, and I felt a lot of empathy for what he went through, and in fact I think it killed him, and it didn't kill me, but I think he had a whole lot of kind of toxic things that went on, and he was terrifically brave, and never gave up, and he had that kind of show business, the shows go on spirit absolutely in his DNA. So it was those two men, I think.
Fantastic. That's really interesting insight. Thank you. So, episode 3. What have you chosen for episode 3, please, Richard?
Well, for me, the set piece that kicks episode 3 off, the first sequences, which involve action by Hadoke. I mean, what thrilling words. I don't need to convince you, Toby, as we know you have form in this area. But, for a little boy, action by Hadoke. And actually what action it is. I mean, I edge of the seat, behind the sofa doesn't cover it. I found the opening of this, and I still feel it again. It's the ability to trigger it again. The whole of the sequence where the end of the cliffhanger of the previous episode is that they're being driven by Auton policemen, and then the beginning of this next episode is this whole thing in a quarry. Of course it's a quarry, where the Doctor and Joe have to kind of hide from the Auton policemen, and then the Brigadier turns up and rescues them. And it was so thrilling to me, that, and the famous stunt, which wasn't meant to be, where you'll be able to tell me which of them it is, Stuart Fell or Alan Chance or one of those guys.
It's Terry Walsh.
It's Terry Walsh. Well, there you go. Terry Walsh, who was, I think, the main man, really. Does this incredible fall, which wasn't meant to happen, and then gets up. And I mean, that was just a brilliant bit of the story. So for me, it's that it was so edge of the seat stuff.
Well, this could be the beginning of a beautiful friendship, because I've chosen the scene in the quarry. For the same reason. Pretty much, I couldn't choose a single bit of it because, like you, it to me encapsulated everything. An extra gets killed. That's always exciting. A stunt happens. There's a quarry. The guns in the hands. All of that all coming together in a bit that I found terribly exciting. So we're in accord there, Richard. Episode 3.
The only thing I just say, this is an example, where a little or a lot of knowledge is a dangerous thing. When I rewatch Doctor Who now, I make a kind of mental contract with myself to switch off all the stuff I know about the making of the show, because otherwise, for me now, I find that it's so distracting and so gets in the way. So as we're talking about that scene, I'm remembering Nick Courtney talking about how he hated guns and shooting guns and was scared of them. And he said, you can see whenever I have to shoot fire, do that, I'm flinching slightly. And so things like that would completely ruin my enjoyment. And I have to kind of not think of, or Katie's first trip is in fact caught on camera. I think you can see her stumble, and she was terrified she'd lose the job because she'd hurt her ankle. But all of that stuff is sort of, you don't really want that getting in the way. You want to reconnect with how you felt when you were watching these shows, just as a viewer and a fan, and just loving how the whole chemistry of it comes together.
Beautiful. So that was Richard and me in the future. I've got no idea what we have said or will say. But we're back to me now, just in order for me to say thank you for watching or listening to me bang on about episode 3 of Terror of the Autons. We will bring the story to a conclusion in the next episode, but in the meantime, when the telephone, you couldn't do a telephone cable of death now. It would have to be a mobile phone ringtone of death or something like that. Anyway, careful who you answer the phone to. Until next time, goodbye.